Hi, I'm Jason from CropKing, and today we're going to be building a vertical NFT system. What you see here on the table is what you should receive with your package. It's always a good idea to open everything up and make sure it matches what's in the packing slip. You're also going to want to have some tools alongside to help you with the process. We recommend having a tape measure, scissors, a wrench, and a ratchet set. The first thing you're going to want to do is glue your PVC. The best way to do that is go to the instruction manual and scan the QR code. It'll take you to a video as to how to do that properly. It's important that you give it plenty of time to dry. You also want to make sure that you press your fittings together tightly to prevent leaking. After you've glued and assembled your channel, the next thing you want to do is start to build out the caster assembly. You're going to want the casters themselves, the bag labeled wheel kit, and then also your 9-inch pieces. A good way to double check whether or not you have the right piece is to obviously confirm with a tape measure, but you'll also notice that each hole is exactly 1 inch apart. So to make sure that you have the 9-inch piece, count 9 holes. If it has 9, you have the appropriate piece. Now we're going to actually attach our casters to our frame. I'd recommend that before you get too far down the line that you take your pieces of 9-inch frame and insert the black caps into the ends. You're going to have to push those in pretty hard. You may need a mallet to do so, but that's going to protect your fingers from the raw edges where the cutting has taken place on the steel tube. So when you're ready to assemble your spinning caster, you want to make sure that it's aligned properly. So you're going to take the vertical edge of the caster and you're going to line it up with your 9-inch piece of framework. You're going to want to take one of the 1 3/4 bolts with a washer and insert it down through the framework and then down into the caster. You're going to put another washer on the back and then hand tighten the nut. In order to get the second bolt to align properly, you need to push the caster all the way to the top to expose the opening for the hole. Another bolt with a washer. Again, you will push it down through the framework and into the caster. Once it comes through the caster side, you want to put a washer and another nut just to hand tight. Once you have your first side attached, you're going to want to go ahead and put the second side of the frame on. This then goes through the caster, a washer on the back, and a nut to hand tight. Make sure you push that caster plate all the way to the top. Grab another bolt and another washer down through the frame and through the caster, washer on the back, and a nut to hand tight. You're ready to install your static casters. You're going to take your 9-inch piece of framework. You're going to take your static caster. You're going to place the steel tubing over top of your caster. You're going to take one of those 1 3/4 bolts, add a washer down through hole number 1 and down through the caster, add a washer on the back, and hand tighten a nut. For your second position, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to take your bolt and put a washer, slide it down through the frame and then through the caster, a washer on the back side, and then a nut just to hand tight. For the second side, you're going to just repeat what you did for side number 1. Once you have your 4 casters assembled, go ahead and wait to tighten those nuts down. We want to make sure that everything fits properly on the lower frame assembly. Once that's done, then we'll tighten things down. We're going to attach our casters to the frame at this step. So what we want is to get our longer bolts now. So these are our 4 1/2-inch bolts. We're going to put a washer over top of the bolt. We're going to come up through the bottom of the first hole on this rectangular tube. We'll do the same again on the second piece. And we'll set those aside. We'll now take another set of these larger bolts and washers, and now we're going to insert through hole number 4. So count down 1, 2, 3, 4, up through the bottom. And do it again with your second piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, and through. You want to make sure that you put your caps on the end of your spacers as well to prevent yourself from getting a cut from the steel. Once you've done that, go ahead and take this 3-inch piece and insert it over the 2 bolts that we put through hole number 4. You'll now take 38-inch piece of square tube and insert it over those same 2 bolts that we put through hole number 1. Grab one of your static casters and place it over top of the 4 bolts that we have ready and waiting in the frame. Once you have those 4 bolts up and through, you can then place a washer on each one and hand tighten a nut. Now we're going to insert the second caster on the far side of the box tubing. we're going to start the exact same way. We're going to go ahead and take one of our 4.5-inch bolts, put on a washer. I'm going to put that through hole number 1, which will be the hole closest to you. Again, a washer and a bolt through hole number 1. Another bolt, another washer. This time we're going to count 4 holes, including the one that you already have a bolt in. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Insert the bolt with washer, and then do that again on the right-hand side. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to create the spacing that we need for the proper wheel alignment, we're going to use this little 3-inch spacer. It's going to be on the inside of the frame. So you want to count 4 holes in from the out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and set this guy right over top of the 2 bolts you have waiting. The 38-inch piece of square tubing is going to serve as the spacer for the outside. So you're going to put that over the 2 bolts that you put in hole number 1. You're now ready to mount your second static caster. You're going to use holes number 1, count down, and hole number 3. So we're going to stick over top of bolt 1 and bolt 3, place a washer, and hand tighten a nut. So once you have the 2 bolts on the inside through the frame, a washer, and a hand tight nut. We'll now assemble the other side, repeating the steps that we did for side number 1. Take your rectangular tube, you're going to set 1 under hole number 1, and your second piece of rectangular tube, and you're going to put it under hole number 3. We'll now take one of our 4.5-inch bolts, apply a washer up through the rectangular tubing, and then through the square tubing. And again, at position number 3. Up through the rectangular tubing, and up through the square tubing. We're now ready to put on our spacers. We're going to again count out 4 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take a 4.5-inch bolt, put it up through hole number 4. And again, at hole number 4 on the inside piece of rectangular tubing. Then take our piece of 3-inch spacing over top of the 2 bolts you just inserted. You're now going to use your swivel caster. Make sure that you give yourself enough space between the end cap and the hole for the bolt to be able to pass through the frame. Once you're happy that you can get the bolt through the hole, you can now put this down on top, passing the bolts down through, and now we go washer and nut to hand tight. And then the same on the inside, only to hand tight. Our final step to build the lower frame is to put our last caster in place. So we're going to repeat the first 3 steps that we did for attaching casters. We're going to put a bolt with a washer at position number 1, up through the rectangular tube, and then through the square tube. Repeat that step again at position 3, up through the rectangular tube, and then through the square tube. We then want to take a bolt with a washer to position number 4, count out 1, 2, 3, 4, and then again on the inside piece of rectangular tube, 1, 2, 3, 4, and bolt up through. I'll now take my 3-inch spacer, place it over the inside pieces, the inside bolts, and now I'm ready to add my final swivel caster. As before, just make sure that you have enough space with the caps so that the bolt will fit through properly. Set that over top of your bolts you already have in place, and then one by one, push the bolt through, apply a washer, and a nut to hand tight. Final step to the cart assembly is to go ahead and tighten down the bolts and the nuts. You don't want those to come loose. You also don't want to over tighten. So once you feel your ratchet grab and there's no longer any opportunity to turn the ratchet any further, you're tight enough at that point. Once your frame's built out, it's always a good idea to just tap your caps to make sure that they're seated properly. A mallet or a small hammer is all you'll need. When we're ready to start building our upright, we're going to use the bag labeled frame. It's going to have all the nuts, bolts, and caps that you need to finish that part. You're also going to want to grab the 75-inch long pieces of rectangular tube to mount the uprights. What we're going to do here is we're going to start by counting from the inside edge of each caster. We want to count in 6 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At the 6th position, we want to take a 3.5-inch bolt with a washer. We want to push it through the top hole, through the rectangular upright, and then out through the back side of the frame. We're going to take a washer and a nut to secure that in place. To make this a little easier on yourself, it is sometimes nice to have something that you can prop the vertical piece up on, like a hammer end, or get somebody else that might be home to help you. Once you have those first couple in place, you're going to do the same thing again with the last 3 holes. Taking a 3.5-inch bolt with washer, insert it through the frame, through the vertical upright, and then through the second piece of frame on the inside of the cart assembly. A washer for the back side, and then a nut, and then again for the final bolt. Once you have your first upright in place, go ahead and leave your bolts loose for now. We'll tighten those down later. Now go over to the other side and you're gonna insert the 3.5-inch bolt through the outer frame, through your second upright, and then through the inner frame. Washer on the back side, and then apply a nut just to hand tight. Another bolt and washer, and now you can do the lower holes. For our next step, we're gonna put the horizontal piece on top of our 2 vertical uprights. Before we do that, we want to take these square end caps and put one into each end of our rectangular piece. Once you have the caps tightened in place, you can then lay this piece across the top. It's going to sit right on top. And what we want to do is we want to measure carefully because we're actually going to change bolt sizes now. We're going to go to 2 3/4 inches. So take the 2 3/4 inch bolt, put a washer over the top. You're going to want to grab one of these black pieces. This is called a gusset plate. Put the bolt through the gusset plate. And then from the top, you want to count over 4 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. In the 4th hole, in the outermost hole of the gusset, are going to align. You're going to push the bolt through the horizontal piece. You're going to put a second gusset on the back side, a washer next to that, and then finally a nut, and go ahead and secure to hand tight. You can now push these 2 pieces up so that they align with holes number 2 and 3 with the vertical piece. And we're going to repeat this process. Pick either of the 2 holes. It doesn't really matter which one you put it through first. Through the vertical piece, through the gusset, a washer, and then a nut to hand tight on the back side. And then you'll complete this step with the other 2 openings in the gusset. We'll now repeat the same process for attaching the gusset plates on the second side. We're now going to grab 2 pieces of 36-inch square tube. We're going to lay those up onto the frame so that hole number 1 aligns with the holes in our vertical piece of rectangular tube. We're going to put one of those pieces on either side of our vertical upright. We're now going to take a 4.5-inch bolt with washer. We're going to insert it into the first piece of square tube, through the piece of rectangular tube, and then back out the other side through the second piece of square tube. We'll now go down to the other side and repeat this step again. Double check that hole number 1 is in alignment with your piece of rectangular tube. 4.5-inch bolt with a washer. Insert the 4.5-inch bolt through the piece of square tube into the rectangular tube and out the back of the second piece of square tube. You'll then apply a washer and secure a nut to hand tight. And your first 2 pieces of support are in place. We're now going to put another piece of horizontal support in place on our vertical frame. What we want to do is begin down with the 2 pieces of square tubing that we just installed. We want to count up 28 holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. We actually want to insert the piece of tube at hole number 29. So I'm going to keep my finger in place to make sure I don't lose that position. I'm going to take another of the 4.5-inch bolts with a washer. I'm going to take my first piece of 36-inch square tubing. I'll insert my bolt through the square tubing, through hole number 29, and then put a second piece of square tubing through hole number 1 into that bolt. I'll take a washer and a nut and put it on to hand tight and repeat the process. 28. Remember, we want to put our bolt through hole number 29. So I'll keep my finger at hole number 28. I'll bring my piece of square tubing up and insert the bolt through the square tube at hole number 29, through the rectangular piece, and then through the second piece of square tubing. I'll put a washer and then put on a nut to hand tight. For our final piece of horizontal support, we're going to count up 27 holes from the piece that we just installed. Again, we're going to insert our bolt at one hole higher, actually at hole number 28, but I'm going to hold my position with my finger at hole number 27. I'm going to grab another piece of the 36-inch square tube, a 4.5-inch bolt with washer. I'm going to insert it into hole number 1 of my piece of square tubing, and then insert that through hole number 28. Once that's through, another 36-inch piece of square tubing, 1 inch in diameter, washer, and nut on the back. Again, just to hand tight. We'll then go over to the other side and repeat the process again. I'm going to count up 27 holes and put my bolt through hole number 28. Hole number 27, I'll bring my piece up to meet hole number 28, washer on the bolt, bolt through the square tubing, bolt through the rectangular tubing, second piece of square tubing, washer, and a nut to hand tight. Once we have all our horizontal supports in place, we can go ahead and take our ratchet and wrench and start tightening these all down. So you want to start with the gussets and head all the way down to the bottom to your assembly where you put the first piece of vertical in place. Now's a great time to go back and just double check and make sure that all of your end caps have been put in place. If there's any that you've forgotten to do, it's a good time to do that now. So I'm going to begin by putting my rectangular pieces in first. So we've got the vertical pieces that we used here on either end to build out our frame. So we'll start with those. You'll notice on some of these that there's a notch in the end cap. You want to put the notch in line with the bolt. The idea is that the notch will allow the bolt to sit correctly inside of the tubing without this interfering with the bolt's position. Let's connect our horizontal NFT channel supports to our vertical upright. What we want to do is count 17 holes up, and at hole number 18, that's where we'll connect our support beam. So what we want to do is take our bolt and insert it through our piece of 1-inch square tubing, 2 side by side, and you want to leave 6 holes here and 6 holes here. So then at hole 18, you'll push this all the way through the rectangular tube. Once you've got it through, a washer and a nut to hand tight. We'll now connect our second horizontal piece. This time we're going to count up 14 holes and push our bolts through hole number 15. So I'm going to start by putting my 2 bolts through my horizontal support, and then at hole number 15, push all the way through, washer and nut. For our third position, we're going to count up 12 holes and then put our bolt through hole number 13. For our fourth and final horizontal support, we're going to count 14 holes up and then push our screws through hole number 15. We'll now move to the other side and begin putting our horizontal supports in place. It's very important that you make sure that you read carefully in the directions manual which hole you're going to put your bolts through. Okay, now we're going to glue on some of our end caps. And this process is definitely one that a lot of people struggle with. So we want to show you the proper way to do this with CropKing channel. So the first thing you want to do is start with a piece of your channel and get the end caps and fittings ready that you're going to use. So for this, I'm going to actually use one of our end caps here, and I'm also going to use one of the knockouts to put an elbow onto. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this is nice and clean. So I'm going to use some of my clear primer, and I like to have a rag nearby because this can get a little bit messy. But I want to run this primer all over on the inside of my end cap, anywhere that PVC glue is going to go, to get it ready to receive the glue. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the piece of channel itself. So I'm gonna go on the inside edges and on the outside edges. And once I'm comfortable that I have applied enough of the primer to my two pieces, I'm gonna marry those together. So I'm gonna cap that, and I'm gonna move over to my PVC glue. And I can't overemphasize it enough that you're better to use too much than not enough. Oftentimes when things leak with our CropKing systems, it's because the people that installed them did not use enough glue. So don't be shy about using plenty of glue to make sure that your two fittings come together nicely. Again, always good to have a rag nearby to do this on so that you don't make a mess of your table or work area. So we're gonna get plenty of that glue, and I'm gonna basically just repeat the process that I did with my primer. I'm gonna get plenty of glue down into the joints here of my end cap. I'm not too worried about how much I put on. I'm just getting a good coating in there so that there's coverage throughout the entire end cap. And then I'll do the end of my channel. And one of the nice little things about these to make sure that you're putting them on the right way is if you look at your piece of channel end cap, it'll say CropKing on it. If the CropKing logo is up, you're in the right direction. So we're now gonna push these two pieces together. Give it a nice hard push. Make sure that those are seated correctly. And then you can have your rag that you have nearby and wipe off any excess that you might have left. So once our end cap is installed, I'm gonna put on the piece that's gonna receive the elbow, and I'm gonna basically just repeat the process that I just did with my end cap. I'm gonna start with my primer and prime the inside, making sure that I get as many of the spaces filled with primer as I can, just to make sure that we've got it clean and ready to go. And then I'm also gonna do that with my piece of channel. So now we're primed, and we're gonna do the same thing with glue as we did with our previous end cap. We wanna make sure we use plenty so as not to underuse the glue. So I'm gonna dab that in and just let it run down into the openings. Some on the outside here, some on the inside. Plenty of glue. Set that aside for a moment. And then I'm gonna apply some glue to my channel. If you're wondering if you're using enough, just use a little more. And again, push those two pieces together. We'll now install our elbow at the end of our cap. Begin the same way you have to this point. Primer, this time just to the inside of the elbow. No need to put any on the outside because we're not gonna actually stick anything to the outside of the elbow. And then we're just going to apply to the outside of the post here. Again, no need to put anything on the inside because we're not gonna actually glue anything on the inside of this outlet. As mentioned before, it's always better to use a little too much than not enough. So I'm gonna get a nice amount down into my elbow there, and then a good amount on the outside. I wanna make sure to give this a nice hard push when I push these together. We don't want anything to be visible of the post when we're done. So when we push this on, we find that the two pieces fit together perfectly. So once you finish your first gluing here, you're ready to apply your top cap here. And what we want to do is just go ahead and seat these two pieces together. Make sure the two rails grab one another, and you'll hear the cover snap in place. Now, it's very important with this particular piece that where the end cap is located, you're going to make sure that the hole aligns with the end cap. The reason for this is where our line is going to bring water into the NFT system to provide nutrients and water to your plants. If you do not see a hole in the piece of the top cover, you do have the wrong piece of top cover. Go back to your grouping of top covers and find the one that has the pre-drilled hole. Our next gluing is going to be two of the open end caps. So we're going to proceed with that the same way we did with the closed end cap. We're going to start with a little bit of primer and cleaner, and then we're going to move on to our PVC cement. So let's go ahead and put one of these on. Take my primer. I want to make sure to do a nice priming on the end of my channel. I'm then going to prime the inside of my end cap. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to set it aside for a second to dry. And then I'll take my PVC glue, and just as before, I want to make sure I put a liberal amount down inside of the channels of the cap itself. So I'm just going to kind of let gravity pull that down in for me, right down into that space. And then here, gluing thoroughly the end of the channel. Once those two have a liberal amount of glue, I'm going to go ahead and press them together. Now we'll repeat the same process on the other side. Our next step is to build our intermediate drain assembly. We want to start with our 9-inch piece of PVC, and our primer, and we're gonna choose one of the two ends. Doesn't really matter where you start. I'm gonna prime that end. I'm then gonna prime this bell end. So I wanna use the smaller of the two diameters, the smaller of the two openings. I'm gonna prime just on the inside here. So I did just the outside of the PVC and just the inside of the bell end. I'm then gonna take my PVC glue and I'm gonna apply a liberal amount to the inside of the bell, the narrow end, and then a liberal amount to the outside of the PVC. And when I push these together, I wanna make sure they're very, very tight. So I'm gonna set this end on the table, put the PVC on top, and push down with all my might. If you've seated these correctly, when you look inside, you should see that the PVC of the pipe and the PVC of the bell are inseparable. They should be together and easy to see. Our next step is to prime the end of the PVC that we did not apply the bell to. Apply primer to the inside of one of our remaining elbows. We'll take our PVC glue and apply a liberal amount to the outside of the PVC pipe and a liberal amount to the inside of the 90-degree elbow. And just with like the bell end, we want to make sure that we push these together with a lot of force. So we're going to push quickly and we're going to push hard. And there is the intermediate drain assembly piece. We're now going to apply a 90-degree elbow to one of the two ends. Doesn't really matter which one you choose. Just pick one of your two end caps to apply this to. We're going to make sure we prime the end nicely, prime the inside of the elbow well. Go back to our PVC glue, put a good amount of PVC glue inside of the elbow, on the outside of the end cap, and then we're gonna push these two pieces together. Now we wanna put our intermediate drain assembly on the end of our piece of channel. We're gonna use our primer on the inside of the elbow and on the outside of the plug of our free end cap. We'll take our PVC glue, apply a liberal amount on the inside of the elbow, and then again at the end of our connector. We're gonna give these a good push together, and then we wanna check to make sure that this is straight up and down. You can use a level to do this. You can also just use your eyesight and try to get it as straight up and down as possible. I'm now gonna install the bushing and ram connector to the end of our 90-degree elbow. This is only gonna go to the drain line that goes down into your reservoir. So you're only gonna do this on two of your pieces of channel. We're gonna go back to our primer here. We wanna do the outside of the bushing, the inside of the 90-degree. We'll then put PVC glue on the end of the bushing and on the inside of our 90, and we'll now push these together. The next step is recommended, but it is optional. Your ram connector, and this is your bushing. We recommend, however, that you get Teflon tape and wrap the thread of your ram connector with Teflon tape. This will help prevent any potential leaks down the road, and it will also eliminate any chances of grit or dirt or any other material getting into the threads, thus causing the opportunity for water to leak. So once that's wrapped thoroughly with some Teflon tape, you would then just put these two pieces together and screw them tight. These are plastic fittings, so you don't want to get crazy using any kind of heavy tools because the plastic will crack. If you want to give it a little bit extra quarter turn with a wrench or something like that, that's probably okay, but you don't want to start cranking it down too hard or the plastic can crack. Once you're happy with the gluing that you've done and all your fittings are the way that you want them, you're ready to put your top cover on, and you are now prepared to put these onto your vertical NFT system. We're now going to make our feed stake assembly. And for this, you're going to want to take your tape measure and your scissors to your workspace. So now we're going to start with a small spaghetti tube. And what we want to do is cut two 3-inch long pieces. So I'm going to measure this against my tape, cut 3 inches, and now I'm going to do that again, a second 3-inch piece. I'm going to take those and set them aside. Now what I need is two pieces that are somewhere between 12 and 16 inches long. I'm going to split the difference and just make them 14 inches long. All right, let's assemble our feed stake tube. So we're going to take our reducing T. We're going to take one of those 3-inch pieces that we just cut. And now we're going to have to use a little bit of horsepower because we want to push the tube onto the barb here. And it's important that you push the tube all the way over the barb until it bottoms out against the reducing T. If you don't do that correctly, there's a good chance that that might leak. So make sure that you put enough pressure in there to get that tube over top of the barb. You'll then take one of these Veriflow check valves and do the same thing with the open end. Push until the two pieces fit together perfectly. Then we'll take our 14-inch piece that we cut. We're going to push that over the barb to complete our first feed stake assembly. And that's one completed. We'll do the same now with the second. We're now going to cut our thicker 1/2-inch feed tube. And again, I'm going to need 2 3-inch pieces. Using the components I have left, I'm now going to assemble my feed tube. I'm going to start with my greenback valve, obvious the name because of the greenback. One of our 3-inch pieces that we just cut, make sure that we push that tightly onto the barb. We'll then take one of our 2 feed stake assemblies, push tightly over the barb. We'll now take our second 3-inch piece, push on tight over the barb, our second feed stake assembly, and then the final press will be our remaining piece of black feed tube. We're now going to cut our 1/2-inch drain line to fit onto our ram connector, which will serve as our drain line to return the water from the NFT system back to the reservoir. So I'm going to go back here to my tape measure, and I'm going to measure out 48 inches. The instructions don't clearly state the distance for these, but we like around 48 inches, which gives you plenty of extra tubing to go back to the reservoir. So we'll now cut 2 2-inch pieces to connect our ram connector and our barbed elbow. So I'm going to measure out 2 inches for the first side, and then I'll do that again for the other side. We'll now take our barbed elbow and insert them into the ends of the 2 pieces of drain line that we just cut. We want to get this all the way over the barb. It does take a little bit of horsepower and some work. I'll now take my piece of 2-inch and put it onto the ram fitting. And then finally, we'll take our 2 pieces of drain line that we cut and we'll attach those to our elbows. Once those are attached, we're going to take those to the center of our reservoir. We're now going to attach our feed line to our vertical NFT system. There's a few valves that you probably want to check before you attach. The first is the greenback valve here. Make sure that that's turned perpendicular to your line so no water's coming out. You also want to shut off your Veriflow valves. Make sure that those are perpendicular to your spaghetti tube. That way when you plug in your pump for the first time, water won't spurt out at you until you're ready for it to come out. We're now going to attach it to the vertical system itself. When you open your pump kit, what you'll find inside is your pump and a few different fittings. You want to find the 1/2-inch barbed fitting. So this is going to fit inside of the 1/2-inch drain tubing that you see with your NFT system. So if you look at the top of your pump, you'll notice that there's a threaded section. You're going to take the threaded end of your fitting and marry it together with the threaded end of your pump and screw that in hand tight. You'll now take this pressure ring provided and slip this over top of your 1/2-inch tubing. You'll then take the 1/2-inch barb fitting, the 1/2-inch tubing, and push those together. Then you'll take your pressure ring, slide it down over the top, and press until you no longer hear clicking. Your pump is now ready to put into your reservoir and begin circulating water. So for the next step, we're going to install our NFT channels. We want to make sure we grab the appropriate NFT channels in order for the system to function properly. So we want to make sure that at the very bottom, we've got our 2 pieces that have the drain line attached. After that, we're going to look for pieces that have the same upright connection. So you're going to have 4 more of those. Those go in next. So we'll start putting those in place. The idea here is to take the unglued end of the 90 degree and put it into the bell end of the unit below it. Again, it's important that these 2 pieces stay unglued so that they can be taken apart later for cleaning. Our final 2 pieces will be the pieces in which the feed tubes will fit into. We want to make sure that our hole at the top is aligned with our feed tube on the far end of our unit. We'll now take the spaghetti tube and insert it deep down into the hole that's been pre-punched for you at the top of your channel cover. You're gonna do that on both sides. The next step will be to open your Veriflow valves and ensure that the arrow is pointing in the direction of water flow. And finally, you will ensure that your greenback valve is still in the off position where it will remain during the process of running your NFT system. And that's how you assemble a vertical NFT system. If you encounter any problems or questions during the build out or use of your system, reach out to anyone at CropKing at any time and we'll be happy to help you out. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy your new system.